हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम टू अनदर वीडियो ऑफ स्नोफ्लेक। आज की वीडियो में हम लोग बात करने वाले हैं डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ स्नोफ्लेक टेबल। सो देर आर बेसिकली थ्री टाइप्स ऑफ स्नोफ्लेक टेबल: परमानेंट टेबल, ट्रांजिएंट टेबल एंड टेम्पररी टेबल। सो इन तीनों टेबल्स का यूज़ क्या है, किस तरह के यूज़ केस में ये टेबल यूज़ होते हैं, व्हाट इज़ द बिगर पर्पस ऑफ दिस टेबल, ये सारे डिटेल हम लोग देखेंगे और प्रैक्टिकली एस्पेक्ट्स इस वीडियो में हम लोग देखने वाले हैं। अगर आप मेरे चैनल में नए हैं तो प्लीज़ सब्सक्राइब टू द चैनल एंड हेल्प मी इन ग्रोइंग दिस चैनल, and also share and like this video so that it can reach to the larger audience who want to move the career to the data engineering field. So we'll start with the permanent table first. So permanent table is a normal table जो हम लोग snowflake में table create करते हैं with the statement create and replace table. So I'm just writing the table name here. I'm not giving any specific ID or any specific unique name before the table. So this is a syntax for creating a permanent table. It's a default kind of table in Snowflake. So this table have two important properties. One is it can have the fail-safe feature, and other is the it can have the time travel features. Means data retention period या data retention feature इसमें होती है. So तो permanent table में you will have time travel feature and also the fail-safe feature. So how to create this table? Just write the command create replace table, or just create table name and like the column name and their data type. So this table is already created. So you can see it's created in the MyDB database, and there's a my schema, and you will see this table as test data. In the tables, you will see test data. So there are few features we need to see into these tables. So one thing more before proceeding, like this table is created in on a schema which is having a permanent schema. Though this schema is not a transient schema or a temporary schema. Like in the starting of the video, I told that the table can be transient table, temporary table, permanent table. Similarly, database can also be permanent and transient. There is no database called temporary database, but schema can be permanent, transient, and temporary schema. So we'll see that which kind of schema is this, which kind of table is this, which kind of database is this. So for that, I'll run the command show tables. It will show all the tables. So I have test data table. So I'll go into the this is my table, test data table. You will see here. So you can see in the test data there is one column called kind, and here it's normal. It's written temp table. So when it is written table, that means it's a permanent table by default table. So if it is something like transient or temporary, then the meaning of the table is different. But in this case, in our case, this is a permanent table. So in permanent table, you can have the retention period also. Like we have seen, this retention time is 1 by default. You can change it depending on which kind of Snowflake, enterprise Snowflake, or just for the demo purpose, if you're using the Snowflake, which kind of Snowflake account you have purchased, accordingly you will get the retention time. This has been discussed in my previous video. You can go through the same Snowflake playlist in my previous video. You'll understand more about how to set up the retention time, what is the meaning of retention time. So here we see that in this test data, we have a kind of table as table, table. So this is a permanent table. Now we will look into the second type of table, which is transient table. So transient table is created just by the same command, but we have to add it here, transient keyword. And in this, where is our table test data trans? And you can see in the kind of the column kind, you will see that it's transient. So that means this is a transient table. Now, what is the difference in permanent table and transient table? So in the permanent table, you will get two important feature: time travel, which we call it the retention period, and the second is fail safe. In case of transient table, you will also get the retention time. You can see it here. You can see that there is a retention time here. You will see retention time is already here, but you will not get the feature of fail safe. So when you create a table, and if you have dropped it, you cannot do undrop in the transient table. So transient table, if you want to save cost, because when there is a fail safe feature enable, or when there is a fail safe feature with the tables, that means the different version of the table for longer period of time, till the time retention time which you have set, longer period of time the data is being protected. So if you don't want to give an extra cost, or have an extra cost of the storage, then you can go with the transient table. If you have very huge amount of data, but you're not more concerned about the protection of data, in that case also you can go with the transient table, because in permanent table there will be a huge storage cost, because there is a fail safe feature is enabled, and also the data retention period is enabled. So to have the lower cost in the storage side, we have a transient table which have just the retention feature and not the fail safe feature. I hope this is clear. So one more thing, I'll just show you what is the schema type. So I'll write it here. So schema. Okay. So my schema is my schema. So my schema, you can see there is an options. So it's blank. That means it's a permanent schema. So I'll create a schema which is of transient type. Let me see if it is allowing me to create or not. So I'll write it here. Create or replace schema. I'll write anything like um, schema trans, and the database have to give the fully qualified name because no database has been selected here. So I'll do one thing. I'll just select the database MyDB. So now we have schema. Okay, replace. We have to give transient keyword here. So this is created. I'll just run this command show schemas. Now there is, I have selected this database, so you are able to see just for this database all the schema. So schema trans, and when you go to the option, you can see this is a transient schema. Now in any table which you create under the transient schema will be automatically a transient table. I'll just create it now and show you. Just copy the same command. I'm going to create this table. I'll write it here underscore demo, and I will give my transient schema name, which was schema underscore trans, and I will not mention the transient table. Okay, so I'm going to create this. Fine. So this has been created. Now I will write it here. So tables. My table is transient trans demo, and when you go here, you will see it's a transient kind. The kind of the table is transient, and while creating this table, I have not mentioned the transient keyword. So the lesson here is like when you have a schema which is a transient schema, so any table which you create inside that schema will be a transient table. Fine. So now I'll try to create a database which is a transient database. Okay, now my database is created. When you refresh this, you will get this database. I'm going to create a schema in this without using the transient. Like I'll just create here, create schema, um, demo underscore schema. Okay, and I'm going to create it in the database. Okay, it's not showing here. Okay, so I'm going to create it in this the database. I'll just write the database, the db underscore trans. So schema created. When you refresh this, when you click on this, you will see this schema, right? Now I have to see that which kind of schema is this. So schemas, okay, demo underscore schema, which we have created now. So you can see that option, it's a transient. So while creating the, when you have a transient database, so all the schema, all the tables inside the database will be a transient, irrespective of which command you are firing for creating it. Second thing, when you have a transient schema, then all the tables, all the object inside that schema will be a transient by default. Fine. I hope this is very clear. If you have any doubt regarding this transient table, you can drop the comment in the section, in the YouTube section. Also, you can mail me if you have any further detail, further doubts in this particular topic. Also, we'll check the data retention time of this transient table. So we have a transient table which we have already created, test data trans. So what I will do, I'll just write it here. So tables. So you can see that trans demo is here. The kind of table is transient, and the retention time is 1. So actually in the transient table, you can have the retention time of 0 or 1. You cannot have more than 1 retention time. So the transient table theoretically can have the retention time of either 0 or 1. You cannot have more than 1. So 0 means there is no retention time, there is no backup of the data. 1 means the last one version of the data will be backed up and you can just use that backup data whenever it is required. So I'm just trying to change this retention time to 2. Let's see what error it gives. When you run this command, you will have the invalid value 2 as an error being thrown. If you change it to 3 also, you will get this error. But if you change it from default 1 to 0, 0 means there is no retention, it will work. You can see executed successfully. You can change it to 1, back to the default value. So this is has been changed. So the lesson here is that the retention time of the transient table can be 0 and 1. This is very important. Now the third type of table is temporary table. So temporary table also you can have the retention time, but you cannot have the fail safe. Now the same thing what is in the transient table. So in the permanent table you can have the retention time depending on the which kind of Snowflake version you have. You can have the fail-safe feature. In the transient table you can have the retention time of 0 and 1 and you don't have the fail-safe feature for the low cost of the storage. The third is the temporary table in which you have the retention time but you don't have the fail-safe. Now what is the difference between transient table and temporary table? Transient table will be as a table as a stored in your schema in your metadata, but temporary table will be only available for that session. So temporary table is live or it is available only for that session. If you change the session, the data in the table is lost. So where we will use the temporary table? Temporary table is used in some calculation when you are writing some big logic, and in the intermediate table you want to create, you want to do the some calculation. There you need a temporary table because you don't want that to be stored, but you want some table structure so that you can have the temporary placement of your data and then you can move with the other logic with the data. The second important thing is temporary table can have the same name as a permanent table. So in case you have a permanent table, but in the logic you want the same name for some calculation or some for logical manipulation, you can use the temporary table in this case. So for creating the temporary table, you just need to have the same syntax, but you need to write the keyword temporary. So run this command. So your temporary table is created. So I'll run the command, another command to check like which kind of table is this. So show tables. So you have this temp. So actually this is created in my DB and my schema. So I'll go to this schema and then I'll do the show tables. So you will have this temp created, test data underscore temp. So here you see the kind of table is temporary. Fine. Now if I open the another session, so if I open another session and I'll see that is this table created on being here or not. So I'll write it here. I'll just select my DB and my schema. I'll just run the command show tables. So you can see here there is no table as temp because I have opened another session. If I close this session, this table will be gone from here also. So if you go to another session, if you open another session, you will be not able to access the temporary table. The other thing is if you're using one session, the other person logging into the same account cannot access your table because that table will be not available for him, because when he will log into the Snowflake to the same account, but the session will be different. So he will log in a different session and that will not allow him to have the access to the temporary table because temporary table is only for that particular session, right? So I have one permanent table also. And one more thing, you cannot have temporary database. You can have temporary schema, but you cannot have a temporary database. So I have a permanent table called uh, test data. So I can create a temporary table with the same name. Like for example, I'll copy this command, and this is in my DB and the schema is my schema. So my DB, my schema with the same name, I will create the temporary table test data. Fine. So now with the same name, the temporary table is also created. Now, when you create the temporary table with the same name as permanent table in your program, in your SQL, so when you query the temporary table or when you query the table name, when you will write select star from the table, So this is test data, and your this temporary table is also test data. In that case, you will have an access of the temporary table. You will not have an access of a permanent table. So if there is the same name of permanent table and temporary table in the same schema, so you will have the access only to the temporary table, not to the permanent table. So if I run the command here, select star from this table test data, okay, I'll have no data because this is pointing to the temporary table. Now if I go to another schema, another session, and I run here the same command, select star from test data, you will get the data here. Because this is the new session, this is not able to access the temporary table, it is accessing the permanent table. I hope this logic is very clear to you. If you have any doubt, please comment in the video, or you can directly mail me. I'll just try to clear all your doubts. So this was all about, and one more thing which I already mentioned, you cannot have temporary database, you can have temporary schema. So these are the three important tables. You should know where to use what, and where we should not use a particular kind of table. In the next video, we'll look into more of a copy table, a different kind of loading and different kind of Snowflake feature. तब तक के लिए अपना ख्याल रखिए. Take care and goodbye.